What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, May 3rd, 2017, hump day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday. A lot of crazy stuff going on here today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling our dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And the good news on the computer level out here is that Spectrum is still slow, but not as slow as they were yesterday, so we're a little closer to being back to normal. But looking at the down detector and reading all the complaints, I think Spectrum has become an illustration of why monopolies are not necessarily a good thing, because the price will go up and the quality will go down, and people are left without any kind of a choice in terms of where they're going to go with what they're doing. Okay, so getting on into the news here. Interestingly enough, Director James Comey is basically being grilled by the White House regarding his giving Hillary Clinton a get-out-of-jail-free card. And basically, Comey is saying he doesn't regret his decision. He thinks it was the right decision to make. He has no regrets. But spent most of his time screaming about Russian interference and terror and all this other stuff. A lot of people are very surprised that Trey Gowdy seemed to be coming to Comey's defense, saying that Comey is stable and trustworthy. And a lot of people are scratching their heads about that one. But again, if I am correct as to what was really going on behind the scenes with that private email server, then everybody's going to keep that scandal under wraps, because that is a scandal that could bring down the entire government. And for those of you who are just joining our audience more recently, what we're talking about is a repeat of the 1994 Chinagate scandal, which was a secrets for campaign cash scandal. They evaded investigation back then. And it's a legitimate question, given that the hacker, Guccifer, who got into Hillary Clinton's private server, reported 10 other foreign IPs wandering around all the files. It is a reasonable question to ask if Hillary Clinton was repeating that Chinagate scandal, selling U.S. secrets to foreign interests, using the email server to deliver the goods, and her so-called charitable foundation to collect and launder the money. And it is a legitimate question, and it needs to be asked, and it deserves an answer. But again, in Washington, D.C. politics, there are two kinds of secrets. There are the little secrets that can be used as weapons against each other, like Anthony Weiner and his problem. Then there are the great secrets, the ones that would bring the entire government down. The JFK assassination, the truth behind 9/11, the truth behind TWA 800, and so forth and so on. And this has all the earmarks of a great secret. Even people who do not like Hillary Clinton are working very hard to keep the lid on this. Now, Comey went on to say that he was never an anonymous source to the media on the investigations into Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, and he certainly did not authorize anybody else to do it. You know, we're all sweetness and light over here. And again, interspersed with Russia hacked the election, Russia hacked the election. The intelligence community agrees Russia hacked the election. Actually, they don't, but he just said that for the TV cameras. More terror is coming if you don't allow the FBI to continue doing what it's doing, and the threat is coming on. Okay, so let me just do something here real quick. Now, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump had a phone call. And apparently Putin is also calling Erdogan over there in Syria, trying to calm things down. He's talking de-escalation. Now, what Putin may actually be doing is reading Erdogan and Trump the Riot Act and saying, this goes no further. And they've got the muscle to back it up. So we'll see where that's going. But as you know, Donald Trump is now saying he's ready to meet Kim Jong-un And, of course, the war hawks are going ballistic. Hillary Clinton is saying, he's doing this the wrong way. We don't talk, we bomb. Same thing with John McCain. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call. Bob in Las Vegas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I wondered, have you seen Mike Whitney's new article in Counterpunch regarding this whole North Korea issue?
It doesn't ring a bell, not by the author name. What was the headline? What was the gist of it all?
Well, basically, it was from today's Counterpunch, and he argues that this whole North Korea story is a distraction meant to distract people away from a U.S. Jordanian invasion of Syria from the south, drive up to Deir ez-Zor, the oil-rich area, and the North Korean issue basically accomplished two things that they wanted: more money for the military-industrial complex and to get that bad anti-missile defense installed, which they've achieved.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have a similar article that came out of Press TV from E. Michael Jones, saying basically essentially the same thing, although his take is more a case of a distraction from the domestic problems and the failure to keep his promises to his supporters, the flip-flop on all the agendas. So
right. Well, yeah, I've seen that as well, but I think Whitney is definitely on to something. I agree with his assessment.
Again, I'm hoping that Putin has drawn a line in Syria's case in the sand, in Korea's case the jungle, and said, this has gone on far enough. A lot of people are dying. It's doomed to fail anyway. Let's just back on off and try and calm things down. And again, Putin seems to be the only adult in the room right now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining our network. Now, China has issued a warning to all of their citizens currently in North Korea to leave in advance of a possible attack by the United States. Because as we have seen in recent history, the United States isn't really very careful about what it's targeting. And a lot of innocent people get killed, and China wants their citizens back across the border into China. There's another article out here saying that North Korea looks to be gearing up for more sub-launched missile tests, and this is based on satellite images which show the construction on a second submersible platform. Now, what this platform does, it is basically a framework onto which they will put a missile launching tube, and then it actually will submerge below the water in order to test fire a sub-launched missile. They've already got one. They've been using it. If you remember that video of Kim Jong-un with the rocket rising up out of the water behind him, that's that platform. They're building a second one, which does seem to imply either the first one is worn out or they are going to accelerate that development. So we'll see what's happening there. Apparently there are other indications that yet another whale submarine, the Gore, may be about to be launched as well. And again, North Korea is not the threat here. North Korea merely wants to deter the United States from attacking, and the saber rattling is still going on. We just put up an article at whatreallyhappened.com where they're announcing that commandos are ready to infiltrate North Korea and destroy the ballistic missile and nuclear weapon sites. Well, ballistic missile sites, yeah, they're pretty much fixed. North Korea could have some mobile launch ballistic missiles like Russia and China do. But as far as the nuclear weapons, that's a real gamble betting that you know where every single nuclear weapon is. And I don't think that's necessarily a solid fact at this point. Meanwhile, even as the United States screams about North Korea's weapons test, the United States fired off another nuclear-capable Minuteman III last night. And they're out there flexing their muscle and saying, see, we've got weapons. And basically the attitude coming out of the White House is, we can test our weapons, but you can't test your weapons. Nya, 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 nya. What are you going to do about it? Now, obviously, when you're developing a new weapon, even a defensive weapon, you are going to have to test it to make sure it's actually going to work. Less so here in the United States if you've seen the Pentagon War. But you want to make sure that rocket is going to go in the direction it's intended. And so it's actually wise and prudent for North Korea to be testing their missiles, or they're going to wind up like Great Britain had that huge embarrassment not too long ago, where they launched a Trident missile test, unarmed, and it flew entirely in the wrong direction. It was actually headed toward the United States. Now, getting down to the gist of what this is all about. Editorial over in Russia Today. North Korea's true crime, it's not completely dominated by the United States. And that really is what it's all about. Look at all these invasions, regime changes, drone striking. It's basically recolonization of these countries by Washington, D.C. for the benefit of large corporations and some very rich people who want to be richer. Now, again, in response to that phone call, article coming out of Press TV, analyst E. Michael Jones is saying that Trump is using the standoff with North Korea to distract his domestic political opponents. I'm not sure how well that's working, because I'm certainly seeing a big hue and cry over his immigration policy, over the health care reform, over the emergency budget. I don't think it's really worked to call the sharks off that are swimming around the White House right now. Very alarming article coming out of Activist Post, and we mentioned this a few days ago. This is confirmation. There are now new developments in Syria which seem to be forecasting another false flag chemical weapons attack to be blamed on Bashar al-Assad. Fars News Agency and a number of independent journalists on the ground inside Syria are reporting movement of the notorious terrorist support group and propaganda outfit known as the White Helmets that signals the possibility of such an event taking place in the near future. Now, that would dovetail with our caller's suggestion that there's going to be an invasion of Syria from the Jordanian border. And we know they're going to use a false flag because Syria just wants to take back control of their own country. And the U.S. warhawks want to go on in because Syria is the last stepping stone before the much drooled over war with Iran that they want and you will pay for and your children will die in. Story out of Global Research up in Canada. The real defenders of democracy are these countries being attacked by the U.S., like Syria. And the war is against the international despotism of Wall Street. It's all about the money, colonization, wealth. All wars are bankers' wars, but you're never going to see the bankers themselves or their families actually fight and die in them. That's what you people are for. You serfs, you plebes. That's what we're going to use you up doing. There's too many of you anyway, so we're going to send you off to war and make ourselves richer in the process here. Now, antiwar.com is reporting that Saudi Arabia and their coalition appears to be on the verge of attacking one of the major ports in Yemen, Hodeidah, and seizing control of it, which would only enforce the starvation regime, the blockade on Yemen, even worse. And it's already turned into a humanitarian disaster. Story coming out of anti-war again. Saudi land push in Yemen could cause heavy casualties. This is Saudi Defense Minister and Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And he's out there saying this invasion is to restore the former President Abd Rabbu Mansur Hadi to power. Hadi was a U.S. puppet. When the U.S. intervened and they kicked him out, or they kicked out the former ruler, they put this guy in. The people of Yemen don't want him. Salman's just admitting what this war is all about, slapping down the people of Yemen and get them to love their U.S.-approved junta. Now, veteran aid expert John Egeland is warning today, following a visit to Yemen, that they are on the verge of what he calls a biblical catastrophe, a biblical famine, and the children are starving to death over there. You never see that on the corporate media. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Michael, about this border wall, the estimated cost is between, $12 and $15 billion. You know, Republicans and this president aren't very good at math. Approximately, $100 billion is spent per year on the illegal immigration problem. So if you do the math, just pull it out of your own pocket and get it built. You're going to save $85 billion per year. I mean, with all this haggling about who's going to build it, build the damn thing and save yourself $85 billion per year on this illegal issue.
Well, the point here isn't the money and the cost. The point here is the New World Order attempting to blur all of the ethnical, racial groups on Earth into one common lump to undermine our sense of identity, our sense of self and history, to make it easier to control us. That's what's on the line here. And they're willing to spend the money to ship refugees and immigrants all over the country and to give them handouts and subsidies to support that globalist agenda. And they are opposed to anything that might impede that progress. In fact, there's a new announcement out of Brussels. When we get down to that, this is going to be a real alarm bell ringer. The globalists have not given up on trying to blur us all together, so there are no more Americans and no more Frenchmen and no more... There is simply the workers, the proletariat. That's it. The Eloi.
Well, we had no problem sending over $34 billion to Israel. I mean, dig down, get the money, get it built, and stop this globalist agenda. Just stop it.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And again, I'm not really convinced a wall is all that necessary. All we have to do is enforce the current immigration laws and cut off the financial incentives for the illegals to come here. No more free things, no more jobs. If you come here, you're going to starve in the streets of the United States of America. And already we're seeing a decline in people coming across that border because they think that stuff is coming. And in any event, if we really want to barricade there, I still think it's cheaper to put crocodiles in the Rio Grande.
I agree. Now, isn't the law actually says right now the current fine for each violation, for hiring violation of illegal, is $10,000 per violation, correct?
It's something like that. It's all in Title VIII. Even giving aid and comfort to an illegal immigrant can get you 5 years in prison per count, or if you financially profit from it, like you're a human trafficker, or you're the factory owner, you can get 10 years in prison per count. So when you look at all these mayors and governors who are out there saying we refuse to enforce the immigration law, they're committing all of these thousands of counts of violations of Title VIII, and they should be basically thrown in prison.
Agreed. Hey, thank you, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Now, interestingly enough, over in the Middle East, somebody did a poll of the young Arab population, and they are very strongly turning away from the United States and pivoting toward Russia. They see Russia as a happening country, and it's because, first of all, the U.S. is making war on all these Muslim countries. The U.S. is seen as anti-Muslim because of all the propaganda that's been coming out in the corporate media. And, of course, unquestioning U.S. support for Israel's aggressions against the Palestinians is a big turnoff. So, in the case of our relations with Israel, we're being penny wise and pound foolish. We're making Israel happy, but we're driving more and more regions of the world into the Russian sphere of influence. Now, Iran has gotten out there and made a wonderful suggestion, which is going to go absolutely nowhere. A senior Iranian foreign minister official is saying it's time for the international community to force Israel to join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and allow inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. And, of course, Israel say, we're not admitting we have nuclear weapons, and even though there's paperwork from the former government of South Africa that Israel was selling them, trying to sell them a nuclear weapon. And remember, as long as Israel has nuclear weapon technology and refuses to sign the NNPT, every single penny of your money sent to Israel by the U.S. government is a criminal act under United States law. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about Iran is now calling on the international community to apply pressure to Israel to basically sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and allow the IAEA to make sure that Israel is not, in fact, selling nuclear weapons to other countries under the table, as they were caught trying to do to the former government of South Africa. It doesn't make any, I mean, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty makes absolutely no sense if there are nuclear nations that will not sign it, and Israel is one of them. But given Israel's history of belligerence, it is an issue. And I think all the nuclear nations ought to sign the NNPT and allow IAEA inspections to make sure that that very dangerous fissionable material is tracked globally, and we know where the problems are. But we do know Israel has nuclear weapons. They were trying to get them all the way back when John F. Kennedy was president. We know that their first generation nuclear weapons were built around weapons-grade uranium smuggled out of the United States of America from a company called NUMEC. Now, under the Symington Amendment to the Foreign Appropriations Act and under the Glenn Act, it is illegal for the United States government to send any of your money to any nation that has nuclear weapons technology and refuses to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty or allow IAEA inspections. Just keep that in mind when this whole nuclear debate moves forward. The U.S. government is breaking United States law with these billions and billions of dollars being showered all over Israel. By the way, do you remember that individual who was caught behind all of these telephone threats to Jewish community centers here in the United States and other countries as well? Nice Jewish boy, and they're trying to excuse it, saying, oh, well, he's autistic, he's this, he's that. Then they found out he had a huge Bitcoin account with a lot of money in it. The United States, understandably, would like this individual to have their day in court. Israel is refusing U.S. extradition request for this person who made all these phone threats. Imagine my shock here. Now then, remember Eisenhower and his farewell address, and he warned about the military-industrial complex. And by the way, if you're not familiar with Eisenhower, and you would have to be my age and older to really remember him, it's worth going back on YouTube and hunting down some of his speeches, such as the farewell address about the military-industrial complex, and another one he made called the Cross of Iron speech. Because President Eisenhower, as Supreme Allied Commander of the forces in Europe in World War II, he saw war up close and personal. And he was one of the most anti-war presidents this country ever had because of that experience. It wasn't just movies on a screen or TV shows or computer games. He'd seen the reality. And he was opposed to more war and to the power of it. So on that same theme over at Blacklisted News, they've got an article about the power in military black budgets. And they're talking about these top 5 military contractors, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and Raytheon, and the absolutely amazing, horrifying volumes of money just poured all over them for the development of new weapons, new machinery of death. And if you look at the U.S. military budget, it's larger than the defense budgets of the next 25 countries, 24 of whom are supposed to be friends. And there is so much waste, so much poor quality coming out of all that money because it's a money-making scam is really what it is. And Eisenhower said that's what it was going to be. It was all about the money and the power. Now, on the assumption that Russia's electronic jamming isn't the reason why so many of those cruise missiles missed that Syrian airfield, that's pretty poor performance for such an expensive weapon. Actually, come to think of it, if Russia did knock them off course, it's still poor performance for a very expensive weapon. We'll be right back after these commercials. Aloha America, welcome back to the show, and some of our listeners just sent me that Counterpunch article by Mike Whitney in which he is postulating that all the attention is being put on Korea as a distraction for a coming blitzkrieg attack into Syria from Jordan, probably justified with a new false flag gas attack reportedly being set up by the White Helmets. It's almost like they don't even care anymore if we know they're lying to start the war. They're just going to go through the motions and get the war that they want. They want it, you will pay for it, your kids will die in it. That's the way they think it ought to be here. Now then, getting on over to Hillary Clinton, article out of Investment Watch blog. Hillary Clinton still can't comprehend her devastating loss to Donald Trump. She's still in denial, and apparently on a recent interview on CNN is still out there saying it was all due to FBI Director Jim Comey's meddling. And Donald Trump responded to that, saying that Comey was the best thing that ever happened to Hillary because he gave her that free pass on all of her felony Title 18 violations. And Hillary attacking Comey shows tremendous ingratitude. And I'd like to remind everybody that had Hillary been playing by the rules all along, there wouldn't have been an FBI investigation. Hillary is a perfect example of this mindset of which there's way too much in our political class of, it's okay for me to do whatever I want, just don't you talk about it. Now, Piers Morgan is out there saying Hillary did not lose because of Vladimir Putin or Comey or misogynist men. She lost because she ran an arrogant, insulting, elitist campaign, and if Democrats do not own up to that, they're going to lose the next election as well. And that's fairly accurate. The DNC pretty much discredited itself in this last election, and it's actually getting worse because down in Florida, there is a lawsuit against the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz by the Bernie Sanders supporters claiming that their financial support for Bernie Sanders was basically fraudulently obtained because of the DNC's actions to throw the nomination to Hillary Clinton. They donated money to the DNC to support Bernie Sanders, not Hillary Clinton. They're feeling they're defrauded. They may have a legitimate case. The courts may come on back and say that, yes, all these donors who donated to support Bernie Sanders may be owed a refund by the DNC. And the DNC's lawyer, Bruce Spiva, is up there saying it's perfectly legal for us to pick our own candidates in the back room. In other words, he's saying it's legal to rig the primaries. Yeah, the voters feel involved because they went to the primaries, but really it's up to us. He's paraphrasing Stalin, who said it's only important people know there was an election. They're not going to decide anything. The people who count the election will decide it. It's all a show. It's all a theater presentation. Now, there's another new analysis that's come on out from Fix This Nation, where people are really seriously looking at why the anointed Empress Hillary I came up short. And there's a lot of overlapping factors. Awareness of the Clintons' past crimes and corruptions, their links to CIA drug smuggling, the obvious health issues. But now that they're actually analyzing the data from the election, they have already come on out and said Donald Trump was able to mobilize his base, and Hillary was not. And we already saw that with the photos of Donald Trump's rallies. He was going to sports stadiums, and it was still standing room only, and Hillary was in these little tiny rooms, and they'd be 30, 40 people, and she'd put her own staffers in there to make the crowd look a little bit bigger. That should have been the giveaway that she was in trouble. She was relying too much on election rigging and this software tool, Aiea, that was making all the political decisions for the campaign. And they lost connection with the base, and that's why the base didn't respond. According to a new analysis, one of the big problems Hillary was dealing with was Barack Obama's voters. People who voted for Barack Obama switched parties and voted for Donald Trump. Not that Trump has not been a tremendous disappointment to us all. Judicial Watch is releasing a new batch of Clinton emails. They have found more classified information. And more indications of Clinton Foundation pay to play. If you want to talk to the Secretary of State, there better be a receipt for a donation in your hand. So that is now moving forward as well. I bet you won't see that one on the corporate media. I am absolutely convinced there's a big, ugly secret behind that email server that everybody has agreed has to stay hidden. Not because they like Hillary Clinton, but because they don't want to lose their own job here. And they're still out there with this Russian meddling in the election. Former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper and former Representative Michael J. Rogers were at the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum Tuesday saying, oh yeah, absolutely there's meddling. Well, look, first of all, look at how often the U.S. meddles in foreign elections, at least 80 that we know of. Obama's over there in France trying to influence that election away from Marine Le Pen. It's an amazing double standard. Hypocrisy on display. It's okay for us to meddle in your elections. We're the United States of America, the moral leader of the world, but don't you dare meddle in ours. And again, you need to remember that all of the election fraud that has been documented so far favored Hillary Clinton. And the Russia bashing is starting to get ridiculous. If at first you don't succeed, lie again, and if the last lie didn't work, come up with something even more outrageous. That's the theory behind the big lie propaganda tactic that Hitler warned everybody about in Mein Kampf. People will fall victim to a really big lie. It's so shocking that they won't stop and think, boy, could this even be true? So, we have this article that came out of the Express over in Great Britain, where apparently a volunteer investigator, Andrei Milny, is claiming Russian President Vladimir Putin knows exactly where the wreckage of missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 is. And she is saying that the plane landed in the Bay of Bengal, and Putin knew where it was all along because of Russian satellites. It's rather absurd. Why would Putin keep that secret? Another one. This one is way out there. This is at IntelliHub. A former Russian colonel and defense ministry spokesman, Viktor Baranets, is claiming that even as I speak, the Russian military is planting sleeper mole nuclear weapons along the U.S. coastlines that are built to burrow their way down into the seafloor undetected in order to trigger tsunamis on command. I mean, that is really out there. Somebody gave this guy a huge amount of money to come up with this. Now, if somebody wanted to trigger a tsunami on the eastern seaboard, it's only going to take one nuclear weapon, and you don't have to get anywhere near the United States. And I'm talking about that Cumbra Vieja volcano over there in the Canary Islands, where the western flank has already started slipping. Put a nuke under there and throw the western side of that mountain into the ocean, you will have a tsunami all over the place. But I mean, this kind of thing, hidden nukes along our coast to trigger tsunamis. That's really out there. Now, apparently down in Florida, there's a federal investigation into Burlington College involving some misappropriations of money, bank loans, and unfortunately, it's tangled up with former Burlington College President Jane O'Meara Sanders, who is the wife of Bernie Sanders. And it's amazing to see the enthusiasm the feds have to go after her while still looking the other way anytime Hillary Clinton walks by. Wanted to point out that little compare and contrast exercise for you to see here. Article coming out of Washington's blog, liberals are just as irrational and close-minded as conservatives. Now, the liberal self-image is that they are superior, that they are tolerant, that they are willing to look at the world as it could be. But the reality is, a study published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology concluded that conservatives and liberals are equally averse to listening to opposing viewpoints on the hot-button issues, such as same-sex marriage. and it was a meta-analysis of 41 different studies published on the Social Science Research Network, reached a similar conclusion. There's no difference between conservatives and liberals in terms of flexibility and willingness to listen to the other side. Now, this brings me to a book. And we linked from whatreallyhappened.com to its Amazon page. And this is an unpaid plug. It's called Being in Time. It's by Gilad Atzmon. It formed the core of the talk they had in New York last Sunday. And he was kind enough to send me one of these. I'm not all the way through it, but I have to tell you, this is one of the best written, most insightful books about current events that I've read in a very long time. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of overlapping themes, but he comes on out and says one area in which you need to view liberals and conservatives as being different. Liberals are caught up in what they imagine the world could be and believe that that's where they're going, whereas conservatives are trying to deal with the world as it actually is right now, this moment. And from that difference in perspective comes a lot of the conflict. Liberalism, of course, is itself founded on an intellectual fraud. Margaret Mead's Coming of Age in Samoa. And liberals hold it as an article of faith that if they can change the environment, they will change the minds of people. Even though they continue to fail time and time and time again, nobody has the courage to go on back and re-examine the prime theorem behind it all. But it's a very, very good book, and I recommend it very, very highly, and you can get it at Amazon. Rachel Maddow is out there on a tear regarding Donald Trump's recent comments about the corporate media. And she's out there saying Trump wants to kill us, meaning metaphorically wants to kill the corporate media. It's a dangerous time for the First Amendment. Now, the issue here is that Donald Trump wants to strengthen the libel laws so that if the media unfairly smears you, you can seek recourse in the courts. Now, what Rachel Maddow and the corporate media are concerned about is a big part of their business is smearing people. Political opponents, foreign leaders, and so forth, and they want to go on being able to do that. And it's kind of strange for them to go back and say that this is a First Amendment issue, because it isn't. The First Amendment is there to protect the truth, not to protect lies and liars. But that's what the whole core of this argument is really all about. The corporate media they've learned nothing from their past embarrassments. They want to go on doing what they do, which is being paid handsome sums of money to be very good liars to the American people in the world. Now, some people in the media are starting to get it. Jake Tapper took part in a panel at the National Press Club last Friday. And he said, yeah, it's time to acknowledge the corporate media bears at least part of the blame that the public doesn't trust them. It's not the fault of the Russian propaganda arms. He says, yeah, there have been a number of scandals in the past decades where people in the corporate media were not telling the truth. They're at least acknowledging this is a big part of the problem, and that really is it. We've caught them lying, we've exposed their lies, and lying some more is not going to make the problem go away. Let's talk about the economy a little tiny bit. U.S. auto sales plunge dramatically as the consumer debt bubble continues to collapse. People are defaulting on their credit cards. People are not willing to use their credit cards. They're trying to pay them all off. And as a result, again, people do not have money to buy things. And they just got the sales figures for the month of April, and every single major U.S. auto manufacturer missed their sales projections by a wide margin. They're actually having to rent additional parking lots to store newly made cars because they don't have any place to put them. They're trying to keep the factories open. They don't want to shut the factory down. because it's actually a very long, involved process to shut an auto factory down and then at some point in the future start it back up again. It's not like just walking in the door and flipping on the circuit breaker. Down in Venezuela, their inflation is really taking off. It's approaching 2,000% per year as the economic collapse escalates. And you need to pay attention to what's going on in Venezuela and Brazil because it's going to be happening here. They can't keep up this Ponzi scheme much longer, and that's all it is. And the reason they can't is because there is no longer a mechanism to recycle the money accumulated at the top by the money junkies and send it back down to the bottom as decent wages and salaries for working and middle class people so that they can then pour it back into the economy and keep things going. Until that is corrected, this economy has to collapse. It's already locking up. Over in Flint, Michigan, despite the poor quality of the water coming out of those faucets, Flint has now put 8,000 people on notice for tax liens for unpaid water bills. When is it going to sink through to the powers that be that ordinary Americans are just flat out of money? They're broke. Do you think people don't want to have tap water? They want to have safe, healthy tap water. They can't even get that. Most people want to be able to pay their bills. That's why they want a decent paying job. And they are not out there. And that is the problem. The economy, the wealth inequality has brought the entire system to the edge of collapse. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And you don't really need me to tell you our economy is in serious, serious trouble. All you have to do is open your eyes and look around. Walk into your own town, village, suburban neighborhood where you live and try and see it as a tourist would. Just looking at everything, the decayed pavement, the corrosion, the retail vacancies, the number of homeless people. We're seeing iconic American companies vanishing. We almost need an endangered species program for some of these places, like Sears. They're pretty much in the death spiral. They're on the edge of having to declare bankruptcy. Now, there's another indicator. Do you remember 2 years ago, TV was flooded with all these commercials, we'll buy your old scrap gold. You don't want that old ring or bracelet or necklace. You send it on in and we'll melt it on down and send you back cash for it. Well, apparently that market has dried up. All the junk gold has already been scavenged up. And people don't have any. They don't have any left. We're sucked dry. And the vampire's getting angry at us because we're sucked dry. Bitcoin's doing well. They're getting really close to $1,500. And it's all over the place there. Still not entirely sure how that is supposed to work. I really should learn it, though, probably. Meanwhile, over in Iceland, the krona has been crowned the world's best-performing currency, according to Russia Today. It's doing very, very well against the euro and the dollar. It's amazing what jailing a few crooked bankers and writing off all the debt created through fraud can do, isn't it? Which is why you're probably not going to hear this on the corporate media either. Might give you debt slaves uppity ideas that you shouldn't be having here. Speaking of debt, I mean, we are basically $20 trillion in debt. It can never be paid off because of the very way private central banking is set up. And the more they inflate the money supply, the more it benefits the rich And it takes away value from the money you've already worked for, that you've got in your wallet, that you've buried in the mayonnaise jar out by the pineapple plantation. Inflation is another hidden tax because it is eroding real value from the ink and paper stuff. Because the ink and paper stuff has no intrinsic value in and of itself. But it does seem... Oh, there's the music. We're going to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. Do join us on the air, 800-313-9443.